everybody. It's good to have you back. It is a Wednesday night here at the studio at Studio A. That's right. Some 1997 vibes tonight. Here in Studio A at 6:58 p.m. Our guest for the evening is Brandon Joe Williams. This is going to be Taxation and Sovereignty Part 2 in the first hour. We have Brandon on with us till the top of the hour, so he's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes. We're going to get right to it. In the second hour, we are going to be doing a little bit of rock and roll tariffs, or Rick roll tariffs. Is it a Rick roll or is it rock and roll? It might be a little bit of both, but don't go to the Twitter pundits on the left for any kind of understanding of what just happened today. We are going to have some fun with this one, and I'm going to introduce a new aspect to the show that is, I think is going to be pretty cool in getting more of your opinions on the record. Anyhow, that's it. Brandon Joe Williams tonight. Taxation and sovereignty up front, and then at the back end, we're going to dive right into like World War tariff that's going on, and it'll be great. After the show, I'm doing a little bit of overtime with Matt Christensen. It is that time of the month. That's right. Well, actually, last week was that time of the month, but Wednesday was my birthday. I turned 40 a week ago today. Isn't that crazy? But so now I'm 40 in a week. It's all over. It's all over, as they say. But tonight, that's all I got. Oh, before we go right into the intro, I have a couple of things right here. I have the names of all of the Rumble rants and the Quite Frankly Super Chatters between the dates of March 24th and last Friday. Last Friday, I said this Monday I was going to pull a name and I forgot about it. But from March 24th to last Friday, this is going to be for Jane Barlow's new book, The Field Guide, the herbal field guide with the added new edition chapter on psychedelics. So let's see who gets it. And then we're going to do another raffle, maybe 2 weeks time, with all of some more of my book club books that I used. Here we go. All right. The winner is Rubino82. That's a Rumble ranter right there. Rubino. So Rubino82, get in touch with me. Frank at quitefrankly.tv. Get in touch with me. Say, hey, I'm here to claim my prize. And now you have a wonderful book to add to your, I'm going to leave your name right there. Another wonderful book to add to your library at home, especially if the apocalypse comes. Speaking of apocalypse, Blue Monster Prep, they're still my wonderful friends and affiliates. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. Things that are probably going more so in our way than they have been in recent years, but there's still a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of really bad actors out there. And ultimately, we may still be going through some really, really high intensity times. If you want to call them big disasters, who knows what kind of traps will be laid. But Blue Monster Prep, make sure that you got your basement and your fallback location all in order. Your go bags are packed with first aid and everything else. That is on the affiliates page on quitefrankly.tv. Use promo code Frankly for all of the free shipping. Never forget Pat and Gina. Love them. And they are essential. Is that it? Oh yeah, one other thing. For sponsorship of this show, I want to sell out all of the Polaroid sponsors and also the video greeting sponsorships on the Patreon and Subscribe Star. That's the 2020 level, the video greetings and also the Polaroids. I have found like 20, and I'm going to be giving away to new sponsors on Patreon and Subscribe Star that are at those levels. I've got our 2017 album. We have like 20 copies left. That's what I'm giving them away. So if you want Set the Charge, Sky Goes On, there's no reason to press albums anymore. So just that little sweeten the deal with coffee, Keto Brainz. We're sending a whole bunch of stuff out. Become a sponsor this month. I'm giving away the farm for my birthday. So that's all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Let's get this one kicked off because there's too much to do and too little time to do it in.
Jesus. You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's
duel between two parties in particular at this point, and we'll talk about that anyway. 98% of the social media chatter on the issue is just about the precious stock market fluctuation that nobody understands, even myself to a large degree. All I do know is that I learned about things like fractional reserve lending, banking. I learned about things like quantitative easing. I understand certain things, just like I understand tariffs from, what they're made to do, and also how to implement it, how they are implemented in situations like this to actually make them reasonable tools of self-defense, as I was talking about with Dilly the other night. But did you know that nearly $9 trillion has been pumped into the marketplace and mostly has flowed through the stock market as well since 2008 with all the quantitative easing? So the fact that any slight change in policy or talk of a tariff or a new administration that may have a different outlook on foreign relations, anything, including a rumor can trigger $1 trillion ripple, $1 trillion ripples, I should say. That shouldn't be a surprise. There's so much funny money out there. This is all so ridiculous at the very basis of it all. So, I mean, that's that. But it's also just as ridiculous to think that the money is just gone at that point and not about to be reinserted wherever prospects have improved. So, for example, the prospects will be improving here in a pro-United States side of things. So a lot of this pain everybody talks about, the corrections that are being made, it's transitory, like most things. The pain that we're feeling now was being felt over the course of the 50 to 60 years that this current financial order was being created. Only thing is that at the end of that transition, we were living with a very, very reduced standard of everything. And in that transition, cities like Detroit completely lost their identity and went down the shitter. And I mean, that's just it. We went away from independence and we went into dependence, and that's what was waiting for us. Now, we might be feeling a little bit of pain right now, but if we stick to this, at the other end of it is going to be a higher sustained standard of living that used to be there, at least to some degree, 60 some odd years ago plus. So that's the whole thing. In which direction are we transitioning? The worst transition's already been made. And in between, there's a whole lot of flux. There's a whole lot of reinvestment. There's pulling investments. There's moving money around. And there are little people who have to just deal with what better or worse prospects they've been left with economically. So, I mean, but then again, social media is filled with just a bunch of high-functioning disabled people who are merely parroting what their remote control handlers are feeding them. And in the last few weeks, most people have probably been asking Grok every morning or ChatGPT, can you re-explain to me what a tariff is? Anyway, much more on that in the second half. But I'll tell you one thing. One way to make all this transitory pain inflicted by tariffs and trade wars go away, one way we can do that is cut, if not abolish, immoral and vampiric practice of direct taxation on our income. How horrid and antithetical to everything that this country was built on, And I had this cartoon over here that I thought was really nice. I found this from the Columbus Dispatch. It's a little bit of a tax day. Where is it? No, that's not it. Wait, I got you. There you go. Here is a new Sisyphus story. Sisyphus, the one who was damned to push the boulder up the mountain for the rest of forever. To always have the boulder roll down and having just to do it all over again. Well, that analogy's been made with tax day here in the United States and perhaps everywhere else. But yeah, the cartoon from the Columbus Dispatch I think it was great. And I use it as the default picture for tonight. And it tells a common story of this time of year. It's the modern day Sisyphus effect. Climbing the mountain of another financial year and pushing the boulder up to the peak, getting clobbered with taxes by people who can't cut it in the real world, and then we're sent right back down to the bottom of the mountain again to do it all over. Only this time we have thousands more dollars in credit card debt because that's what we needed to buy all the Christmas presents since everything else was sent to the fucking bloodsuckers in D.C. Well, anyway, that's not the case for Brandon Joe Williams. He is not stuck in the Sisyphus abuse cycle. And his first appearance was on March 5th. And, Brandon joined us there. And I if you did not watch that one, you might be a little bit lost in the weeds tonight. So I made sure that the link to the March 5th episode is actually in the description of this episode. So you can go back and either get a crash course again on the foundations of what we had to do. I would suggest people go back and listen to it. So we got a crash course on those concepts of citizenship and nationality. Some things that we spoke about as he's coming in right now. Some of the things that we spoke about were the concepts of taxes being voluntary. And I had seen this has popped up a lot over the course of the weeks that since Brandon had been on the show last. But I've seen it all over Twitter and elsewhere too. The concepts that taxes are voluntary to those who aren't placed in the jurisdiction of U.S. District of Columbia. So we were talking about that. And then, of course, I'm just thinking about some other things that I brought up there too. There are two different jurisdictions, one being the United States of America in form of the corporation, and another being the original republic that was established by our founding fathers. We talked about sovereigns, true sovereigns, how they're officially classified by tax authorities as non-resident alien. Is that right, Brandon Joe Williams? Non-resident alien? Do I have that right? I'm trying to remember everything I can. It was a very dense evening the first time you were on.
Yeah. And then basically, the original sovereigns of the country were white people. Free white person was the actual term used, right? So if you look at the original Naturalization Act for 1790, one of the things you had to have in order to become a citizen of the United States was you had to be a white person. And white person had a very particular definition. And literally, if you look up free white person in Black's Law, they list every single European culture that's a part of the definition of a free white person. And they also list several cultures that are not part of the definition of a free white person. For example, people who are born in the Philippines, it specifically says in there that those would not be considered white people, because we have a lot of history with the Philippines, actually, which is pretty fascinating in itself. And then they also say Indian people of Hindu descent or of Hindu something like that is specifically listed as an article, a type of person that could not become part of we the people.
Okay.
So they can't. So there's a very specific and there's very little information you will find about this. And the reason why there's so little information you will find about this is because if you do a lot of research on the passport system now, it's all based off of the 14th Amendment. But Mr. Miller in the slaughterhouse cases says very, very clearly the 14th Amendment only has to do with released Negro slaves that were released after the 13th Amendment and then given citizenship by the 14th Amendment. So it gets creepy because then you realize that really, basically, you have to be a Negro to get a freaking passport. And then you go and you type in, do you have to be a U.S. citizen to serve on juries? The answer is yes, all right? The term U.S. citizen is this special citizenship class that was created from the court case called the slaughterhouse cases. And it was a special kind of citizenship specifically for the released Negro slaves. And then you look up the definition of the word Negro, and it says specifically that one of the definitions is in certain areas it was defined as someone with 12.5% African blood or above. So then you start thinking to yourself, oh, he says Negro, he means black people. No, one of the definitions of Negro is every Negro is a colored person, but not every colored person is a Negro.
Oh.
Literally as one of the definitions. No, not even kidding. In the law dictionary, right? So Negro does not mean black. And then we start saying, oh, African American. Well, by saying African American, you are calling them a Negro, right? The thing is that the word African is literally that is the word. That is the active word. The difference between somebody who's a 14th Amendment citizen and somebody who is an actual American is literally the difference between white and Negro. And the word Negro, if you look it up, the definition is of African blood. So when you say African American, that's the worst thing you can call a melanated person, is an African American. The word African, sadly, just needs to come out completely of our vocabularies. You don't want to use the word African for any reason for anyone, right? If you assume that a melanated man or woman is African, you're also putting their entire ability to be considered one of we the people at risk.
It's just crazy. It's crazy to think... because when I spoke to you the first time, we took all these pit stops to jump into definitions of words that I never really sit to think about and stop to think about at all. So once and I know it was a little tedious for some people, but at the end I started realizing why we had to do it. And it almost looks like you saw like the opening to the underworld started to present itself, because there's just we're like living on top of a rat's nest of legalese and all that stuff. And I have some other notes over here. Stop me along the way, because I want to get just a little bit of a nutshell in here before we get onto some new territory tonight. Because obviously, if people really want the nuts and bolts, they can go to your website and check out your work, and this is what you do for a living. Mm-hmm. If you write an affidavit, this is what we had written. So as far as definitions of citizens and nations and all that stuff, when it came to actually separating oneself from the matrix, it came down to writing an affidavit to the IRS or the government entity, renouncing your citizenship and claiming sovereignty that you can remove yourself from the jurisdiction of taxation. And at that point, that is where we started seeing, what at least I saw, a thumbnail sketch being put together by you on what measures need to be taken from there on in to create legal consistency throughout all of a sovereign person's dealings, wherein even something as simple as attempting to obtain a driver's license at that point would create legal contradictions between your claim to sovereignty and then, of course, American citizenship that could result in charges of perjury. And I started seeing this becoming more of a, then, of course, the entire lifestyle has to be around creating legal consistency. Listen, this might be as loose as diarrhea. But
no, it's okay. It's okay. I understand that there's, I've even had a lot of discoveries, and I started writing a treatise on the definition of the word person recently, and I've been going through a lot, even myself, in terms of nailing everything down and asking even myself a lot of questions that I had never asked, and I'm the guy asking all the questions. So it may appear externally that everything is changing and shifting and it's kind of confusing. It's not. What's happening is things are just becoming more nailed down and more clear. Whereas I may have said something or assumed something 6 months ago, now I'm starting to find court cases. I'm starting to find, more places, more definitions. It's my thinking process over the last several months has really shifted into more of a court-minded thinking process. For example, if you have direct evidence to something, it's pretty clear. If you only have circumstantial evidence, you may need to build out 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 pieces of those to show that, because one piece of circumstantial evidence all by itself, it's kind of eh. So here I am now at this point trying to build out circumstantial and direct evidence to all this stuff. And it shifted even a lot of what I thought into different avenues. It's not like things have changed much, but there's definitely different ways in which to explain things.
Just since the last time we spoke?
Yes.
Okay.
There's been a lot of discoveries, and I wrote a whole huge driving versus traveling breakdown thing, which was really mind blowing even for me. having to structure all this. And then I just started writing 2 days ago. I just started writing a treatise on the definition of the word person, breaking down the entire history of, because if you read Dred Scott versus Sanford, 1857, and you read the Slaughterhouse Cases, 1873, prior to 1873, the term U.S. citizen didn't have its own particular class or meaning. People would say, "Are you a citizen of the United States?" Yes, but that wasn't actually a legal citizenship classification. It was a generalized comment that allowed you to say that you were a citizen of one of the states, but it wasn't in itself like its own special legal classification, right? For example, in the Slaughterhouse Cases, Mr. Miller specifically says, prior to 1873, if someone was born in the District of Columbia, they actually were not a citizen of the United States because the District of Columbia was not one of the states, and U.S. citizen category wasn't a special category. So you were either a citizen of a state, which makes you a United States citizen. If you weren't a citizen of a state, you're fucked. You had no citizenship. So if you were born in Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, I'm not 100% sure on it. Guam and American Samoa are a couple of interesting places because they have their own special class of citizenship when it comes to the United States called a non-citizen national of the United States. So but I don't know when that started and stuff. So we're talking about 1873. I don't know what territories we had at that time. I would need to do a little bit more of a breakdown. But my point is that the District of Columbia and any territories or insular possessions it may have possessed at that time, if you were born in any of those areas, even though you were technically born in the United States, you were not given citizenship because citizenship was attached only and exclusively to one of the sovereign states of the Union. So in 1873, in the Slaughterhouse Cases, which we can get into on this show, I can do a screen share if you want to actually get into the quotes. They're pretty shocking, and they're not that hard to understand. They're not filled with bullshit and legalese. They're actually very clear. Mr. Miller says specifically that he's changing all of that, and he's basically interpreting the first line of the 14th Amendment to include persons. But the thing is that when you read what Mr. Miller has to say, the definition of the word persons didn't include people. And if you read Dred Scott versus Sanford, and then you read the Slaughterhouse Cases, they're literally saying, here, I can literally show you this. It's mind-blowing. Check this out. I'm going to do a send a request for a screen share because I just recently kind of fully broke this down, and it's pretty shocking because it's direct evidence that the word persons and the word people are two completely separate terms.
Well, I remember you did persons on March 5th. I think it came down to it's when you were talking about nation, and first time I saw persons be actually defined as an organization of people as well. So that started getting really interesting in itself.
Yeah, since that time, that rabbit hole's gone even deeper. So I broke down the original section when they start talking about this, and then I found the original case where they added in corporate entities as part of the definition. So I broke down the entire timeline of when these things occurred, and that's kind of been a huge breakthrough in terms of, because last time we went over what it means, but this time the recent breakthroughs are I think I have the full timeline as to how it all happened and when it happened and which cases and exactly what was said in each case, right? So, for example, in Dred Scott versus Sanford, basically in this case, they're talking about a released slave, right, who is trying to get citizenship. He can't. He's struggling, so he's sued, right? So they're saying, this is the Honorable Justice Taney who's saying these words. The words, quote, people of the United States, and quote, citizens, end quote, are synonymous terms. Now keep in mind, this is before. So in 1857, the term people of the United States or United States citizen, that was just a colloquialism that was used to describe somebody who's a citizen of one of the states of the Union. It wasn't its own special, totally separated class of citizenship until the Slaughterhouse Cases, which I believe is April 14th, 1873. So up until April 14th, 1873, There was no separate class called U.S. citizen. U.S. citizen was just, everyone was a U.S. citizen. If you were a U.S. citizen, you were a white person, as per definition, and you were your citizenship wasn't with the United States, even though they would say that. That was just used as like a cool term. Your actual legal citizenship would be like a Californian, a Utahn, a Floridian, a Texan. That was the actual legal answer. So if you said citizenship, if they ask you what is your citizenship in a legal capacity, and you said I'm a U.S. citizen, that would not have been acceptable anywhere.
I was a New Yorker.
You were a New Yorker. Yeah. So are you a U.S. citizen would be the precursor question to, okay, which state are you a citizen of? That would be the actual legal delineation of your citizenship prior to April 14th, 1873. Okay. So this case, Dred Scott versus Sanford, is 1857. Keep that in mind. So let's reread this. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms. They mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and each citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of this sovereignty. Now, keep in mind, they keep saying the word people. People, we the people of the United States. Citizen is one of this people. Now, later in that same case, we have Taney, and he clearly delineates this new word, persons. So he says here, the question before us is whether this class of persons described in the plea of abatement compose a portion of this people and are constituent members of this sovereignty. We think they are not, and that they are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. On the contrary, they were at that time considered as a subordinate and inferior class of beings who had been subjugated by the dominant race and, whether emancipated or not, yet remained subject to their authority and had no rights or privileges but such as those who held the power and the government might choose to grant them. And we can get into, even more specifics on this. This is kind of where it gets pretty wild.
Well, anything you can do to get this one into a nutshell within the next couple of minutes, because we only have you until the top of the hour. So I have questions that kind of run the gamut from the audience and myself. But you've
really
already started.
The breakdown on this is really simple. The word persons means Negroes, and Negroes specifically means a colored person of African blood, typically who was held in slavery or a descendant of someone who was held in slavery. So a black man or woman that isn't of African blood wouldn't be a part of the definition or any of this information at all whatsoever. And in fact, depending on which culture they're in, for example, if you take a look at the definition of a free white person, the Moorish people is part of the definition of a free white person. Many Moorish people are dark-skinned. So their legal classification would be a free white person, even though they're black as night. A free white person is a people. A Negro is a persons. And if you look at the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, first clause of the 14th Amendment, and Mr. Miller in the Slaughterhouse cases is very clear. He says multiple times, the 14th Amendment is specifically and only for the released Negroes. It says here, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They are not talking about white people at all. If you were to correctly replace this word, it would be all Negroes born or naturalized in the United States.
Why not explicitly? Why not explicitly state that? Is there any time after this in a court of law that what you're talking about, just this specific use of language has been litigated in some way, or is this just something 150 some odd years later that is now just being dug up and dusted off and understood for the first time?
Clarence Thomas, who is actually a black man who his grandfather was released from slavery through the 13th Amendment. He is a Supreme Court justice, and he has talked about some of this stuff briefly online. He has talked about how the slaughterhouse cases needs to be overturned. Something needs to happen. Besides him, I don't know of a whole lot of other people. You can type in, slaughterhouse cases, 14th Amendment online. You can see some articles. You can see some YouTube videos. But have I ever seen anybody take it like how I'm taking it, where I'm trying to take it all the way to the end zone? No. And I believe, literally, I'm not kidding, I believe that this word in this sentence is the exact and precise moment America went to shit. And it didn't go to shit because Justice Miller, it went to shit because no one ever read what Justice Miller had to say. He was very, very, very clear that the word persons is only and exclusively referring to released Negroes. And then now go into the California Vehicle Code, go into the tax code, go into every single code in the United States Code, every single thing that our entire country operates on. You will never see the word people. You will only see the word persons. So what does that mean? Every single body of what we think is the law, every single code, the California Vehicle Code, even speed limit signs, stop signs, tax bills, have absolutely nothing to do with white people.
It's all just for black people?
It's all for blacks. Well, it's all for Negroes of African descent. It's not even for blacks. It's for a specific subcategory demographic of the black race.
So what would that be? What would the reason for that? Like if you're going to, from an operational standpoint, if you are at the head of this corporation in DC, what would the functional reason be to have everything in this country, even down to the street signs, only truly legally pertain to blacks?
Well, again, I want to be very specific. We have to start being very specific. It's not blacks.
Right.
It's colored people of African blood, and it's a very, very specific percentage of African blood. And a lot of the definitions specifically refer to the fact that they're descendants of those who were held in slavery.
Right. So then,
as we know, do you think in today's world that the DOJ or the Department of State or anybody else would bring these kinds of claims into a courtroom? I don't think anyone will ever bring any of these claims into a courtroom. Now that puts the people who are melanated, the people who do have dark skin, at a massive advantage, because then it's not like, oh, are you of African blood? Like, well, I'm not telling you anything, brother. You prove it. And then what are you going to do? You're going to bring that claim and you're going to say, I can't have rights and I can't be a people and I'm only a persons because I'm of African blood. You prove that. You bring that claim. As soon as you bring that claim, I'm going straight to every liberal organization in the world. I'm going to make your life a living hell. That's what I would do if I was a melanated man. That's exactly what I would do.
In all of your work, has this started getting into? Because I know that there's I follow you on Instagram, and I've known of you for a while now, and a lot of what you post, a lot of your social media presence is posting success stories about one thing or another. This is all super crazy new. This is I'm giving you the hottest shit. This is straight off the pan, brother. These concepts have not made it to any kind of social justice groups yet.
These are the kind of concepts that will, if someone starts to litigate and someone starts to push these claims, these are the kind of claims that are going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and you're going to see Justice Clarence Thomas. He's going to be very happy to see you at the Supreme Court. And that's going to be just like you saw Roe versus Wade recently get overturned. I think it was a year and a half ago. The people who start bringing these kind of claims that I'm talking about, and they take it all the way to the Supreme Court, they're going to get the slaughterhouse cases overturned or at least clarified.
But again, let me, because I need some clarity on this. If the entirety of the system is really only really impacts a very limited number of people in the
I'm not even sure there's even anybody in that classification anymore, because if you look in the definition of Negro, it says specifically does not include mulatto. If you look up the legal definition of mulatto, basically, if there's any white men or white women at any point in time on that blood lineage, because it's been several generations since 1873, right? So if any white people were ever involved, that person would be legally classified as a mulatto. In the definition of Negro, it specifically says does not include a mulatto.
But why would all of the power that is vested in this corporation really be most effectively applied to a small out of the gate portion of the population that would only disappear over time? If you would want to, I would expect them to want to control the lives over more people, over more people's lives than a dwindling number of the population that by this time might be extinct, as you said. It doesn't make sense to me that that this would only really apply from a legal standpoint, jurisdictional standpoint, to such a small group of people from the onset.
Well, the thing is that's exactly what it was, but people just, for whatever reason, nobody read what Mr. Miller had to say in the slaughterhouse cases.
Okay.
That's all it is. People see the word persons and they don't understand the legal definition of the word persons. And you can look up the word persons in many different dictionaries, and you don't see the correct definition in any of the dictionaries. You have to actually go into the slaughterhouse cases, which is not that hard to read. And you have to actually read what Mr. Miller has to say. And you have to actually read the Dred Scott versus Sanford case. And you have to actually read what Mr. Taney has to say to understand the definition of the word persons. And nobody did it, and nobody's done it. And we were coming out of a civil war, and everything was just crazy. And I don't know, somehow it just got lost in translation. And then I'm telling you, the definition of the word persons, specifically in the first line of the first article of the 14th Amendment, is the exact moment this entire country started going to shit. Everything you hate about this country is precisely and exactly because people did not read Mr. Miller and Mr. Taney's work, and they think that the word persons in the first line of the 14th Amendment includes all men and women regardless of race, which is completely and utterly false.
Well, hindsight being 2020, without even knowing all of this, I was already in agreement with you for other reasons that the 14th Amendment was essentially the end of constitutional order. It became the Constitution in many ways, and that's correct. But
and it became all these things through a misunderstanding because Mr. Taney and Mr. Miller did not intend any of these things to happen. So people will blame Mr. Taney and Mr. Miller. That is completely incorrect to place the blame on Mr. Taney and Mr. Miller, I assure you. Now, could Mr. Miller had been more clear, and could he have said more things to try to navigate this a little better? Yes. But we have to really try to stop and put ourselves in his shoes. If you look at the background of Mr. Miller, he felt very, 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 very strongly about releasing the slaves. He saw an opportunity and he took it.
Moving, because obviously this is, as you said, developing. It's hot off the pan, and I already, I'd love to have you back for episode 3 at some point. I mean, we got to just add on because this is a lot. But now I want to get into some questions that might just go in different directions because not only from me but from everybody else. The first one up. This is about people and not only current and future employers. If I owned a business and I were conducting interviews because I had some spots I needed filled, management positions, floor work, whatever the hell it was. If I was conducting interviews and someone came in with no identification, claiming not to be of this country, but instead a member of his or her own nation, I would be inclined not to hire them just out of pure desire to avoid any legal headache that I just don't want to add on to my plate. Not because I don't have disdain for this system, taxation, the red tape, getting in the way of entrepreneurs, how they run their business. I can't stand any of it. But just out of that, wanting to avoid a headache alone, I would probably not hire them. Have people working with your program or through your program, how they handled current and future employers?
Well, keep in mind, we have a lot of people who deal with that problem. We have a lot of people who don't. And we also have a lot of people who own businesses. For example, I had a landscaping company. I was learning all this while having the landscaping company. I went to all my employees and I said, well, they're not really employees. That's another, I switched them out. I renamed them to performers. So I started calling them all performers, and people were like, what is it? Some kind of like a play company or something? I'm like, no, they just perform for me and they're not employees. I just kind of just started doing that. I didn't know what else to do. And so what I did is I went to all of them and I said, look, I've come across some realizations recently. It's not legal for me to withhold on your behalf. If I do, I actually go to prison. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you all the currency, all the Federal Reserve notes that you are entitled to through paying, and your taxes are entirely your responsibility. And you need to handle whatever you need to handle. I'm not going to have anything to do with it, and I legally can no longer withhold on your behalf. If you don't like that, you may leave. And there were a couple people who were a little bit nervous about that, because you got to realize it goes both ways. I've had employers tell me that they started doing this and the people that work for them started freaking out. So it goes both ways, right? So no one ended up leaving my company. We had a great, super high paying. I increased the pay dramatically because I wasn't paying any more taxes. I said, fuck it, I'm going to share the wealth. Started paying them. I think I gave 20 or 30% bumps to like almost everybody. And obviously that was a nice Band-Aid. All of a sudden, their concerns kind of washed away pretty rapidly after that one, right? But the very rapidly they started to really enjoy it, and we moved forward, and it was smooth sailing from there, right?
Right, but again, that's if everybody gets lucky to have a boss like you. Now,
that's correct.
But 99.99% of employers, you walk in and you say, "Hey, I'm a ghost in the eyes of the government," and
So without showing everything, which would be a lot better, but it takes more time, and I'm on a time crunch here. The answer to your question is on the I-9 form, which is the employment eligibility verification form, under box 4, which they just changed, by the way, a couple months ago. It says, and I'm going off of memory, an alien authorized to work, right? If you look in the top of the I-9 form where it says the anti-discrimination notice, it says specifically on the form that the employer is not allowed to ask for or demand any documentation to verify anything on the I-9 form, which is fucking awesome. So what that means is box 4 is an alien authorized to work. Now, what do you have to have in order to check box 4, an alien authorized to work? It says expiration date, and you just put NA or an expiration, and then one of the 3 boxes is a foreign passport. You can get yourself a passport from Slowjamistan, which is the one I have here on the screen. You can get yourself, these are upcoming. I haven't even shown anybody these yet. These are brand new, hot off the presses. We have our own Nation of the Amnesty Coalition passports. These are passport cards that are going to be coming out very, very soon, which will be available for purchase. All you need to check box 4 is you need a foreign passport book number or passport card number. Each of our passports and each of the Slowjamistan passports have a unique passport number. I'm going to go up against the screen. I'll show you guys.
Okay. Wowee. Got his own passport for his own nation. Amnesty Coalition diplomat. It's a This is not.
So that's the passport number right there.
Yeah, I see it.
And then we have same thing here. Slowjamistan. Passport number is right there. So if you look at the I-9, it says right on the I-9, the employer may not ask for these documents. So if you you're going to put this passport number or this passport number on the I-9 under box 4, which is an alien authorized to work. And now at that point in time, the sad thing is that my people are very litigious, and I'm training them to be that way, as they should. Because the thing is that is 100% completely and utterly legal. You are completely able to work, and it says right on the form, the employer can't even ask to see the document. Now, does that mean you can't show it to them? No, you can do whatever you want. You're free as a bird. If you want to show them, show them. If you don't want to show them, they can't make you show it.
This is what I'm talking about before. What I started seeing toward the end of our first discussion is that there is obviously a new lifestyle that coalesces around this to create legal consistency and knowing. I mean, obviously, there's a shitload of study that's involved in it. The
beauty of this is that, you know, all these employers are matching all these taxes for all their employees. You don't need to match shit anymore. Everyone wins. You ain't got to file nothing. You ain't got to withhold nothing. You ain't got to pay nothing. I mean, I wish more. There's a lot of employers that find this information and they go, "Fuck yeah, I'm getting everybody on a WABEN or whatever," because bam, they're the one. They're saving tons of money. They can get rid of their payroll people. Fucking fire all your. I fired the payroll company. I fired all the accountants. I fired all the lawyers. I fired everybody, brother.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Moving on to the next one, because you know I can hold you until about 10 after 8. But I need some time in the second half for some other stuff. So
I'm here for whatever you. I'll stay an hour if you want. I'll do whatever you want.
Oh, I know you will. But let's
okay.
look like no matter one way or another. This is going to need a part 3 and a part 4.
Sure, no problem.
This is from Nathan. Frank, I was hoping you could ask your guest on March 5th a question for me. From March 5th, I should say. I have a friend that hasn't filed in 15 years or so. The last 9 or 10 years, he's worked for a guy that said he would start doing the taxes eventually, but never did. He's curious what the consequences for the business owner is for paying someone under the table and for the employee if the business never gave him proper tax forms. If he also just got married and wonders how the hell he'll be able to, if at all, sneak under the radar anymore. And I had a buddy tell me that his friend didn't pay taxes and owed the IRS $1 million, and he sends in $5 a month and they stay off of his back because he's paying something. Is that an urban myth or is it all legit? I know the guy, so it could be true, but I'd like to know what the guest thinks.
That's like 4 different things.
I know.
It's about 45 minutes worth of response. So
okay.
let's just go with the easiest, fastest bang for your buck. The easiest and fastest bang for your buck on that whole thing is if you get a bill from the IRS, all you're going to do, easiest thing in the world, I'll do another screen share on this one. This one I got to show you because you're not even going to believe me if I just say it. Go to the IRM bill of exchange. And I'm going to explain this in the dumbest, fastest way I possibly can. So if you don't understand, you're going to go on my YouTube channel. There's a recent show I did on Cult of Conspiracy podcast, and I break this all down in excruciating detail, which I cannot even hope to do within my next 15 minutes they have on the show. So Internal Revenue Manual basically governs how the employees operate. Basically, it's basically they take the IRC, which is Title 26, a tax code, and the IRM is basically like how they apply what's in the IRC via the employees at the IRS. It's a different manual. It's the Internal Revenue Manual. It's more internal based operations at the IRS, but it is publicly published for anyone to go and read. So if we go to the IRM, 3.8.45.5.10.1, we're gonna read this. This is the easiest and fastest answer to his question. There are a lot of other things we could talk about. There are a lot of other things we could do, but this is like 5 minutes. All that shit disappears with no fucking worries in the world. If a bill of exchange or registered bill of exchange is received from a taxpayer authorizing the campus to settle their account through Fedwire, send everything received to the following address: Department of the Treasury, Office of Executive Secretary, 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, room 3413, Washington, D.C., 20220. Now, what is this in English? If you really want to know what does Brandon do, how would you classify Brandon's job? Brandon is a translator. Brandon translates legalese, which is an entire language like French or Italian, into essentially English. Okay, that's all I do, right? So if I were to translate this into English, it would be basically if you get a bill and you would like to authorize the IRS to settle it for you through what's called FedWire, which is basically a program that attaches to the Federal Reserve discount window. Send everything to this address.
But why would that be? That is essentially the exhaust duct in the Death Star built in.
That is correct.
Why?
That is exactly
correct. Why would they build in? Why would they put that portal in there for everybody to just? Oh, I can have this whole thing paid off by the government. Why would that be?
Well, I just don't have the time to answer that question, my friend. This is the cover letter that I give away for free, and it's literally entitled using the same words they have. You can see that, you see all this stuff from all these different people, and it goes on and on and on with all this shit. I'm starting to do that less and less. I'm making everything shorter and shorter, and I'm just starting to use all their own words. I'm not even using my own words anymore. What's the name of this thing? It's authorization for the campus to settle the account of a taxpayer using a bill of exchange, a registered bill of exchange that is processed through FedWire. What are they asking for? If a bill of exchange, a registered bill of exchange is received from a taxpayer authorizing the campus to settle their account through FedWire. So, and you scroll down, who's it coming from? Who's it going to? Section 3.8.45.5.10.1 of the Internal Revenue Manual states, this is all their words. This is all I have to say about it, which is just a few things, a thank you and a few other little details. That's it. That's all they need. I've already sent in. I got 3 or 4 bills recently. I sent them all in, and you can actually go on my Amnesty Coalition page, and I have a little note here. 4-1. I sent this exact letter in with 3 various endorsed IRS bills that were originally issued to my U.S. citizen. It was sent registered mail. This is the registered mail number, which was delivered on December 2nd, 2024 at 4:07 a.m. I never got the green card back. Occasionally they get lost in the mail for months. We shall see. I also at the same time sent in a different form, which we're not going to get into, using certified mail that was also signed for. Since doing these actions, I have not received a single phone call, text, email, letter, bill, or anything else at all. And to this day, today is April 9th. It's 4:52 p.m. PST. They have not sent me a fucking thing, not a single phone call, not a single text, not a single email, not a single letter, nothing. It's been complete and utter silence since I sent in this. And I authorized the campus to settle the account of the taxpayer using a bill of exchange, a registered bill of exchange that is processed on FedWire. Now, to go back to the question that the person was asking, the easiest, there's 8 million things I could say. I can go on for an hour. I could explain all these different things that you could handle this in so many different ways. You could put yourself in a position where you never even get a bill to begin with, which is a cool choice. But the easiest, fastest bang for your buck is if at any point you ever get anything from the IRS for any reason, just ask them for a bill. You need a bill. Send me a bill, guys. I'll give you my address. I need a bill. Once you get the bill, you're going to do what's called an endorsement on the bill. You're going to add the cover letter. You're going to authorize the campus to settle that account through FedWire, and you're going to send everything to this address.
Now, wait, Brandon, I got to ask you, is there any way for a person to check whatever has been attributed, whatever balance or whatever? There's no way to see what debt has been attributed to a person via their.
They don't give you receipts. They don't give you thank yous. They don't give you that. When you start doing this, what you would call the exhaust port on the Death Star, they just vanish.
Absolutely. There's just nowhere, because I know it, like when
they don't want people having proof that any of this, they don't want to send you anything. They just go away. Everything goes away. Everything vanishes. It's just complete radio silence. In fact, I think they actually label your account when you start doing this kind of shit, and they'll never send you a fucking thing on anything ever again. Now that part that I just said, that's an assumption. That I don't know for sure. But I know for sure with direct evidence that when you start doing this shit, everything just disappears. No more letters. You'll never hear from them again. It all just vanishes.
Well, let's hope.
So if you've got tax liens on your property, if you've got other shit going on, and you would like your tax bills to simply vanish, that's very easy to do.
Okay. Let me, because I want to keep you on for 15 more minutes.
So we had all these things. The guy was asking this whole long thing with, we can get into marriage. Marriage is actually a contract, and there's actually 3 parties in the state, you and your wife. So once you get the marriage license, it's basically essentially a business that operates under the state. And if you have a marriage license, from that point forward, you're assumed to be a resident of that state, which has complex legal repercussions. There was another thing he said about something else. 15 years, I never filed, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff we could talk about that. There's a lot of things. He gave me a lot to talk about, and I chose to just, what's the fast, hot, nasty bang for your buck? It's get a bill from the IRS. If they ever bother you, if they don't bother you, you're good. If they bother you, all of a sudden they call you and they send you a bill for $415,000, say, fuck you. Don't argue it. Don't fight it. You don't need to. Send me the bill. IRS calls. You don't know if it's a scammer. You don't know who it is. Send me a bill. Send me a bill. What address do you have on account? If they can't tell you, they're probably a scammer. If they do tell you, great, send me a bill. I'm not giving you any other information. I don't know if you're a scammer. Send me a bill. Send me a bill. I need a bill. Send me a bill. Give me a bill. Send me. That's all you need. Once you get that bill, you can do what I just showed you. If you have a bill or registered bill of exchange, okay, and you want to authorize the campus to settle that account using FedWire, you have to have the bill first. You're gonna get the bill. You're gonna follow those instructions, and then bang, it'll disappear.
I'm gonna keep that comment so that when you come on the next time, we can take that apart. Well, first of all, I'd like to open up like the way we did tonight to see what you're hot on the trail of at that point, what new developments, amendments, or anything else that we've been talking about. And then I would love to take that comment and we'll go through it line by line, getting away from the hot take.
It's a good comment. It's clear. A lot of comments are not clear. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I know. It's multiple parts.
It's a clear comment. The problem is that it's got 4 massive sections to it.
Right.
Right. And it's not really an issue, quote unquote. It's just, it happens to land in a show that I've got 20 minutes. So.
20 minutes left at that point. I understand. Let's do with the 15 minutes left. What can we do? We can define one word in 15 minutes. So which word will it be?
You can look at all this in 2 different ways. You can look at it as it's overwhelming and too complicated, or you can look at it as an exciting discovery and exciting journey. It just depends. It's all perception.
I'm taking it.
I look at it as, I've literally thought, Brandon, what's going to happen the day you wake up and you've got this all figured out? It's a horrible, horrible thought. It's awful. What the fuck am I going to do? I don't want to go sailboating. Like, this is my life. Like, what am I going to do when that fucking happens? I'm the guy who's going to be crying the hardest. I'm probably going to be hitting the bottle or God knows what. So, like, I look at it as a completely different light. I look at it as, this is the most amazing, exciting discovery. You can only have a treasure hunt if there's treasure buried to be found. It's like, when there's no more treasure buried to be found, the hunt is over. Yeah, that fucking blows. It just depends on how you look at it.
I get it. I feel right now, I feel like I'm panning for gold in a river. and with what I've got, all of a sudden little nuggets are showing up. And hey, listen, I have nothing invested in this system in the long haul. It's rotting at its core. It is morally corrupt. It doesn't make sense. It's not even from a mechanical standpoint. It doesn't work. It didn't work very well to begin with, and now here we have it. So with what's left, let me know what an endorsement note is. IND, not an endorse. No, I was endorsed by this company. What's an endorsement note? Because your Instagram is filled with pictures of people standing next to beautiful new cars, thanking you for coaching them on how to use endorsement notes to what I don't know what it seems to be that they're just driving them off the lot without paying a damn thing and without having any intention to pay. What am I getting that wrong?
So again, it's a very long answer that I will attempt to answer to the best of my ability in the time given. An endorsement is essentially the way in which you sign, and the way in which you sign determines the transferability, redeemability, and like the way in which the value of a negotiable instrument can be transferred. So a way that I can explain that in a simple way is, let's say you writing a check. Mm-hmm. You're writing who's the check for, you're writing the amount of the check, and then you're signing it, which an endorsement is by definition a type of signature. When you look up the definition of endorsement, it says a signature which, and then it goes on to all this other shit. So an endorsement is a signature that operates in a certain manner, essentially, right? And when you start to understand the way in which that you can endorse instruments, so negotiable instruments fall into two categories, only two. You have the unconditional promise to pay, and you have the unconditional order to pay. And you can endorse either one. Endorsement is how they are transferred, right? So when you understand that pretty much everything is an unconditional promise or order to pay, including a traffic ticket, a court judgment, a tax bill, a utility bill, a phone bill, a credit card bill, a mortgage would be a promissory note. Anytime you're promising to pay, every single time you use your credit card, you're promising to pay, which is why a lot of times you have to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're signing anything, if you go to the restaurant and they print you something and you put the tip on there and then you sign it, that's not a signature, that's an endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's attached to a promise or order to pay is an endorsement.
Okay, so as far as these cars, though, let's talk about the cars, because there's also a bank loan there I saw there too. I'm just wondering what these notes are achieving, and if there is any intent to pay for the property you just acquired from a dealer, or what's the nutshell here?
So you are overpaying for everything all the time and you don't realize it. For example, every time you use your credit card, you are producing an unconditional promise to pay, which is in itself currency. You are depositing that currency onto your credit card account, and then at the end of the month, you're actually getting like a Fidelity investment portfolio. When they send you a credit card statement, it's a positive balance. And the reason why it's a positive balance is because it's basically a deposit account showing all the investments that you made throughout that month. Okay. It's the same thing for a car. When you sign the promissory note, you're signing it unknowingly with what's called a blank endorsement, which makes it payable to the bearer. You're essentially creating a blank check, essentially. You're not stating the payee when you sign or endorse the note, which is called a special endorsement. You're just signing your name or scribbling or doing some horse shit, which is called a blank endorsement. A blank endorsement releases the instrument for transfer without any conditions. So what you're doing essentially is you're manufacturing a promise to pay, which is currency that has the same value as a Federal Reserve note, and then you're sliding it back across the table, and then you're not claiming any of the value or rights of that instrument. What the bank is doing is they're going to what's called the Federal Reserve discount window. They're placing what's called a special and qualified endorsement on that note to claim it. They're writing up what's called a application for notes, which comes from 12 USC 412. They tell you the whole process as to how you write an application for notes. And they're basically applying to transfer the value of that promissory note, which you released without any conditions, without knowing it. And they're exchanging the value of that promissory note at the Federal Reserve note, the Federal Reserve discount window for Federal Reserve notes. And then they're essentially handing you back the notes that were converted, that you created, right back to you. So basically, to keep it simple, a bank is nothing more than a currency exchange. You're manufacturing currency all the time. And then what they're doing is they're exchanging that currency for a different kind of currency called a Federal Reserve note. That's really all that's happening.
Okay, but
they use the word loan, but the thing is that nobody's ever loaned you anything. It's never happened. If your buddy gave you $20 till next Monday, that was an actual real loan. Besides that, no bank or any other financial institution has ever given you what you think the word loan means. It's never happened.
Okay, but let's see. But when there is a physical good there. I go to a Nissan dealership. I want to get myself into a new Altima, and that loan, the car loan, if you have to take that one out, if you have cash, that's something else there too. I mean, there's an exchange of goods there. I saw somebody else on your...
Well, what is cash?
Well, it's currency. Yeah, I understand. It's,
so
the
cash.
Fiat.
So what is... let me reach over.
But here's the thing, Brandon. This is where a lot of people might start scratching their heads and thinking something doesn't smell right. Because it's one thing for me, it's one thing to advocate for the moral right of a person to resist theft through taxation. But taking out loans and driving off with cars with no intention of paying for them doesn't seem ethical to me. And
I understand. And that's exactly what what they hope you keep thinking, because that's what holds all of this together.
So
now,
what would be a good exchange for that good? Because there's a dealership that has these cars on the lot. You want those cars. Just like if I went to the bank to get a $10,000 loan to remake my kitchen, I'm going in there voluntarily. So then if I'm sitting there and I accept the interest rate and anything else like that, then that's a voluntary exchange.
Who's the interest payable to? That's another question.
To the bank, I have to imagine.
No.
Well, I mean, either way, it's just you're getting
the
something.
interest is payable to you. Okay, so what's the definition of credit? Let's start there. What is the definition of credit?
I have to be just on a loan. It's loaned money or loaned currency.
The definition of the word credit, legally and not legally, literally everywhere, is the ability to defer payment to a later date.
Okay.
So how do you have credit? How is credit made? What do you have to be able to do in order to have, possess, or create credit?
I don't know.
You have to be able to promise to pay. If you can't promise to pay, then you can't defer payment to a later date.
Yeah. There's collateral.
That's why it's called a promissory note.
Right. But
a promissory note is evidence that somebody who had the ability to promise to pay was exercising their credit. Essentially, if you want to say it in English in a nutshell, that's basically the way that credit works, right? Since 1933, we haven't had any money, because money is defined legally as 371.25 grains of fine silver in coin form. Fine silver is 0.999 silver or above. Right?
Yeah, but Brandon, the point here is, and I understand, because with all the talking that we do, the more I realize there is a whole hidden world with the legalese, and there's so much that we're existing at the.
So let me just, I know where you're going. Let me just cut this.
But I just want to make sure I drive it home though. I give a promissory note. I make a promise.
Promissory note has
and then I get a car.
Value. Yes. By giving that note, so if the note is $60,000 at 5% interest over 5 years, the value in law, and you could say, well, that's in law. Well, I got it. Everything's in law. Is the full value of the 60,000 plus the 5% over 5 years. That's the value of that note. Keep in mind, what's in your pocket is a Federal Reserve note. So in law, what you have when you sign that document and you slide it across the table, that's a $68,000 or $72,000 Federal Reserve note that you just slid across the table. So you say, I need to pay because I'm getting a good. You already did. You gave them $72,000.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
And I understand ethically and morally that may not make sense. And the reason why is because the system is fucked. I'm telling you the way the system works. I'm not telling you it's okay. I'm not telling you it's ethical. I'm not telling you it's moral. I'm just telling you how the fucking thing operates. If you want to get upset about it, go for it. I think people should. I think people should be fucking pissed. You're giving them $72,000 and then just fucking disappears? And then now you're paying another $72,000? Where in the fuck did my original $72,000 go?
I understand. Again, the gripes you and I have with the system is one thing. I'm talking about the person who just thought they sold a car and somebody just left them with, because we hate the system. Somebody got
no. They're still getting paid. They're still getting paid. The dealership's still getting paid. So what happens is the financial institution operates as a middleman between you and the Federal Reserve discount window. The dealership gets all these docs, they put them into a folder, they send it registered mail to a banking institution, right? So like the dealership doesn't even really know what's going on necessarily, right? It's the financial dealership, it's the financial company that knows these docs are coming, and they're willing to forward the value of whatever it is in Federal Reserve notes because they know as soon as they get that set of docs, they can go to the Federal Reserve discount window and then boom, they're made whole. In fact, they have a lot more than whatever the car costs, because when they swap the value of that instrument, there's a discount rate of 5% or whatever. Yes, true. But all the value of the interest on the note is all payable and part of and built into the value of that note. So when they go to the window and they come back, even after the 5% discount rate, they still made a profit. So when you sign or endorse the original note in a special way, you're saying, guys, this is all you're ever going to get. I'm not going to give you any more Federal Reserve notes. I'm not going to give you anything else. This is all you're ever going to get because it's all you ever fucking need. They go, okay, thank you very much. They go to the financial institution. The financial institution gives them the full value of the vehicle. They go to the Federal Reserve discount window, come back. They're overpaid even after having paid for the vehicle. So they might have a surplus of $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. The dealership got everything they're supposed to get. The financial institution got everything they're supposed to get, and you get the car free and clear.
Well, then we got to do more on this because obviously it's a biggie. I want to talk to you next time about traveling versus driving, especially with the Real ID thing on the horizon over here right now, where everybody has to make choices about whether or not they're going to get the Real ID to be able to travel domestically. There's a lot, and I would also like to go back to that original comment that was multi-part and all that stuff. There's a whole bunch to digest here. Brandon Joe Williams, onestupidfuck.com. The link is in the description. Let everybody know what your streaming schedule is, where you're going to be next. I know I know you make a lot of appearances outside of your own channels and all that. So let people know where they can keep up with you in the meantime.
Social media is great. Onestupidfuck.com is great. I mean, I do research and then I write. Like right now on williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com, my most recent releases are a whole page on driving versus traveling, which is extremely extensive. There's never been anything written like it, I don't think. And then right now, currently, I'm writing a treatise on the definition of the word person, which is actually currently under construction. The page is currently under construction, but it is quite a bit of information already there. I typically tend to write things sort of live, meaning the page is up with all of its fuck-ups and all of its whatever, and I just work on it when I can over the course of weeks or whatever, and then it eventually finishes, and then I announce that it's finished. But you're more than welcome to read that. In the meanwhile, it is definitely the most extensive breakdown, and it's essentially 3+ years of research into the area. And I just really, not to toot my own horn, but I just really, really don't think you're going to find this kind of a breakdown anywhere else. Okay, well, there you go. onestupidfuck.com. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, I also tagged his YouTube channel, so you can click right through there through the description of the episode. Thanks again, Brandon. It was thanks, illuminating and fiery as usual, and I look forward to talking to you again someday. Thanks, guys. See you later.
All right, take care. There you go, everybody. So listen, we're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to come back. I'm going to read your super chats, and there's going to be it's 8:12. So I did good with clock management. We're going to be able to take some calls and lay in all of the tariff war craziness from today. And then I'll be able to get off around 8:55 so I can go and join Matt Christensen in enough time that he's not having a heart attack. I always show up at 8:59 and 30 seconds, and he's like, Frank, you got to stop doing this to me, man. I don't know. I'm sorry, Matt. I'm coming tonight. I'm coming on time. We'll be right back.
There is nothing like a library. You just want to come to a library. Maybe you want to take out the Mein Kampf. Maybe you want to take out the Huckleberry Finn or Catcher in the Rye. Or maybe you're just a homeless person who want to get the internet access to watch a Jewish-made pornographer. Either way, we are giving $100 million to the library so they can buy the most up-to-date book about Marxism and communism.
Welcome.
Lord, the Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments. quite frankly, he's amazing.
Okay. That's by the way, that comedian that does the overdubs of the Toronto mayor, that's Ben Bankus, I believe his last name is. I got into I found him last year, like last January 2024. And I reached out to him. I said, "Man, if you're ever rolling through New York, I'm gonna try to get him on. He's really funny. I like him." All right, everybody. So just a reminder, we're looking to sell out all the Polaroid tiers and the Patreon and Subscribe Star tiers on out there, and I'm giving away, along with the sample packs of coffee and the Keto Brainz. I'm going to give away these shrink wrapped albums from Set the Charge 2017. There's only like 25 of them left, so they're relics, and I want to give them to people because it's better to be with you guys and gals and being enjoyed than anything else. So become a sponsor. New sponsors, old sponsors, I'll find a way to thank you with something else. Anyway, let's see here. Hello, Frank. I listened to the show tonight with Brandon Williams. It must mean March. Or looking forward to the show. Brandon gets deep into the weeds with all the terms and definitions. I believe he is correct, but it does not have to be that complicated. A year or two ago, you had Payman Motadeh, I remember that, from Freedom Law School on as a guest, also on the topic of legally not paying taxes. With that show, I was disappointed because I feel you didn't give Payman a fair shake. It also wasn't a good show because he was just calling in on a phone, and it wasn't very clear for us listeners, but Payman also approached it from the same arguments, primarily that only persons living in the District of Columbia are subject to paying federal taxes. I remember he was trying to make the point that under his system, you are trying to follow the law, not break the law. At the time, it seemed like it was too much of a stretch for you to accept, as it is for most people. If you're serious about not paying federal income tax, I recommend looking at his system. I studied it for months. On my behalf, they said I signed up to the system, although in reality I could do it on my own. It's in a very unlikely that they would come after a little fish like me, but it was a good peace of mind that they would represent me. This is Payman's thing, if needed, and that would be well worth the cost in itself. On my behalf, they sent letters to my congressman explaining the law and asking them if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to pay my fair share. I'm very happy now knowing that I'm following the law and not giving the corrupt government any money. Again, thank you for Brandon. Brandon Williams is correct, but there are more simple systems, and that's from a guy named Eric in the audience. Now, here's the thing. The FedWire thing, like I said, it's the exhaust port in the Death Star. Why is it? Is it really for that purpose? Or are we looking into it and interpreting it wrong? And what does it take but an overzealous prosecutor to set precedent in a courtroom somewhere in D.C. to make sure that nobody can use that again? It just needs one ruling in its favor. But to your point, Eric, I do remember Payman saying that he isn't sovereign and that he's just an American who's trying to follow the laws that they have been posted on the government's own websites. And so it is a lot easier to follow along by comparison to what we've been doing the last two episodes with Brandon. But in using your own words, do you have to live as a small fish for the rest of your life, hoping that nobody notices you? Because the thing I remember most about Payman's appearance, outside of the audio issues, you're correct about that there too, was the issues that I had after the show. Numerous times they had somebody from his camp reached out to me asking me to edit the language in the titles and the description, all that stuff, because he's constantly trying to keep himself legally protected. It's almost like going out there and saying, hey, take apricot seeds for one thing or another, and your entire life is one big disclaimer because you know you're walking a tightrope. And that's where I'm stuck on the issue mainly. I'm stuck in observation mode. I'm observing how people who are walking this path are living everyday life in order to avoid trouble with the authorities. And all authorities that I loathe, by the way. I think you all know me well enough to know that I hate the system. I derive no benefit from the system, despite its claims to the contrary. But I think a great question to throw out there is, who is the biggest fish that is doing this loudly and proudly, knowing that they are 100% immune to legal ramifications? That's a good question. Who's the biggest fish? For example, using Payman Motade, I think that's his last name. He's appeared many times on InfoWars, I believe, in the past. But how would this work out for a targeted individual like Alex Jones if he went beyond just offering Payman a platform to have the conversation and talk about his work, and his advocacy? How would that work out for Alex Jones if he actually started doing it himself instead of just offering up a platform for conversation? There was no shortage of judges and juries that were willing to concoct a reason to throw the book at Alex Jones, and I'm sure the feds would have loved to have found that Alex Jones was choosing not to report millions of dollars or writing endorsement notes and driving away with Hummers or something like that. I want to know more. I'm curious. I'm asking questions that are getting answers that are so exotic to the way that we live everyday life, and I'm sure the chat room had a lot to say too. So I'll be fishing through your comments as well. I'm not I want to learn, but you know how dangerous this is. And a lot of people have expressed support or extreme caution against it over the years that this has come up before. That's why I want to keep picking away at it to see if there's anything else. Let me go into the chat room for a little bit. Into the grab bag. The super chats. Quite frankly, superchat.com. Jay Britt says, Frank, may I be excused? My brain is full. Great show. Zoso Dude says, if Frank gets one of his passports, he'll have to wear the jester hat. The passports. I would love to have my own passport from Brandon. I really would. Let's see. Over on Rumble, we've got a single ranter. That's Hey, Would You Blow Me? Says, there are so many Supreme Court decisions on driving versus traveling. A driver gets paid for driving. If you're going to the grocery store, then you are traveling. I haven't had a license in over 20 years. See, Haywood, I would love to get a little bit more of information on you on that in particular. Over the course of that 20 years, have you had is it just been that you have had no interactions with police in 20 years? There's been no, DUI stops. There has been nothing where I want to know about that. I'm traveling versus I'm driving. Obviously we don't have traveler's licenses, so that's really interesting. I want to know what a night before Thanksgiving DUI traffic stop at the border of your town, between towns, went for you when they, I don't know, anything, no speeding tickets, nothing. I just want to know what that interaction was like. That's interesting in itself. I haven't had a driver's license in over 20 years. Let's see here. Over on Quite Frankly TV, then we're going to get into our trade war stuff for tonight, and then whatever we have left over, it will be for calls. Quite Frankly TV, powered by Foxhole. Rival 969 says, I got the Keto brains and stickers, Frank. Thanks. You got it. Thank you. Enjoy. Let me know if you need anything else. C Blanche, thank you. Dragonfly27 said, he may come off as annoying voice, but he ain't wrong. I don't have a problem with his voice. I just want to listen, and I want to hear, and I wish things were, I understand these are massive concepts because they butt right up against an entire paradigm of being. So I wish there were better ways to cut to the chase, and then through follow-up questions we can expand a little bit more. At least give people something to research. But Dragonfly says he ain't wrong. Crown Weaver, what's the best method to use to contact Brandon and discuss this stuff that I deal with? Well, you got the website. It's all in the description of the episode. Sentinel says, interesting topic, Frank. Molly already wants to know more on how the promise to pay is the payment. He talked a little bit about that there too at the end. But really what it comes down to is He says that one way or another, because of the way the system is set up, the dealership is made whole for the car that they just allowed to get driven off the lot for nothing. I just want to know, I have been in a situation, I have seen people in my life get cars repossessed in real time. I've seen it. I've seen the repossessions happen. They're sad, scary, embarrassing things. And these are for missing 3 or 4 payments. I just don't understand. And Brandon's Instagram is just, you'll scroll for an hour of people standing next to brand new 2024 shiny babies that just came out of the factory. And they're driving away with it with nothing down and no intent to pay. Now, you say, well, somewhere down the line, everybody gets made whole. But the whole thing is that you went in there and you, I don't know. I'm going in there with no collateral and nothing to pay for this except a promissory note for money that it's not going to come from me. Compensation that's not actually going to come directly for me for a good I did not have prior to walking into this dealership. And now the car is mine and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't, I don't know how the hell that works out in long term. Maybe it is all legit, but morally and ethically, that just something doesn't sound right. Like, what if you go to a used car dealership that's family owned, and you're giving your big fuck you to the system, but it's a smaller operation, and they don't have anything to do with the banking system. They're just trying to sell some cars. If this is the compensation the same, whether it's a big Nissan dealership or it's a small, used lot in Kentucky, I don't know. But there's something about that just doesn't make sense, because especially with just bank loans, there's somebody else saying, hey, I had a $16,000 bank loan, my interest rate, this and that, and I've essentially wrote a note and they have stopped pursuing me and all that shit. I'm like, but you voluntarily took out a loan to get that money for one purpose or another. So ethically, I don't know where I am on that, but I'm interested to learn mechanically what the hell's going on. I still don't really grasp it, but that we'll get there, I guess. Let's see here. Crown Weaver says, great show, Frank. The magic is in the definitions being used, and they're definitely not using Webster's. Look up driver in Black's Law and more law dictionaries. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And it's only round 2. We'll see when we can bring him back. Maybe sometime in the middle of the summer or something like that would be good. It's going to need a little bit of time to digest this, go back and watch March 5th and see where we go from there. All right. Okay. So it's 8:28. I want to get this out. I have something from here, the latest from James Howard Kunstler, who I love this blog. I would love to have him on the show one day. Farewell Fugazi. Okay. And this is all about the tariffs and the noise that we are seeing. Take a listen to this. I love it. The ruckus you hear in the capital markets is the sickening howl of the Fugazi economy meeting its extinction. Fugazi meaning fake, unreal, dishonest, misaligned in what societies need to thrive. Fugazi meaning misusing the time value of things that purport to be wealth to multiply fake wealth in the hands of a few at the expense of the many. The pernicious effects of that system are visible all around the ruined landscape of our country, a nation of broken cities, failed towns, and demoralized populace. Mr. Trump apparently aims to convert the expiring Fugazi economy into a production economy, yikes, based on making things of value and perhaps more importantly, of people at all social levels having meaningful roles in the making and moving of things. The Trump tariffs are the first big step in process that is already generating a whole lot of friction, heat, and ferment. The aim of the tariffs is straightforward, the end of trade regime that punishes and cripples American production. The response so far is heartening. Many other countries suddenly seek new trade agreements with the U.S., correctly sensing that Mr. Trump means business. This ain't no mud club. This ain't no fooling around. It's even possible that these readjustments will happen so swiftly that the tariffs differentials will be awash before the summer, and everybody will at least be on firm footing, knowing that the clear new rules say This new disposition of things required forceful incentives to change entrenched harmful practices. Just so that you know, this was published 2 days ago on April 7th. As of today, it is said that about 75 countries have reached out to say we want to start negotiating. Okay? This is 2 days later. Here we go. Just a little bit more. Another angle on this process is dynamic known as import replacement. It means exactly what it sounds like. Where you used to get stuff from other lands, now you make it here. It should be obvious that this can't be accomplished overnight, but the question is, okay, when are you going to start? Part of the answer is we can't afford to put it off any longer. There's an awful lot of stuff, from machine tools to pharmaceuticals to military equipment, that we had better start making again, or else slide into collapse, perhaps even slavery, to other powers. That process starts with deploying real capital as opposed to fugazi capital to restart business and industries. That will take money away from hedge funds and other rackets that exist to play games with ever more abstract layers of things that only pretend to represent money. As that occurs, a lot of pretend money will vanish. Don't be too shocked by this. That's what happens when society bends back toward reality. You start sorting out the real money from the fake money. That's why the price of gold keeps marching up. And that's why I said, if you look from 2008, when quantitative easing started, we're talking about $9 trillion of money that was just pumped in and made its way through mostly the stock market and big whale players like BlackRock and everything else. And you want to talk about real money and where the real wealth, lasting wealth and innovation is really had in a nation like this traditionally, it's with small and mid-sized businesses that aren't beholden to all of the ESG dictates and all the money that comes along with it by companies like BlackRock. It's the ability to be independent of all that bullshit. I sense Mr. Trump and his colleagues knew full well that this tariff play would rattle the markets badly, and that these corrections are an unavoidable consequences are better gotten over as quickly as possible. What else would you expect in a system that has dedicated itself for decades to mispricing the value of just about everything? The snapback is sure to be harsh. The psychopathocracy that drives the global left lost more traction this week in its quest to keep all of its old rackets running. Their foot soldiers in the USA have been defunded effectively by Mr. Musk's Doge, starting with the immense network of rackets that were run around the U.S. aid program. The woke NGOs are no more, and the fat paychecks are no longer going out to those nose ring for lunch bunch who came to infest the D.C. Beltway and their satellite offices in the Democrat Party-controlled cities, hence the feeble turnouts in last week's street actions. The baby boomers have gone especially psychotic. That's why there are so many old folks waving those Soros-made placards in the AstroTurf crowds of hands-off protests after an 80-year run of the most mind-blowing comfort and convenience enjoyed by any generation in world history. America's boomers stare into the abyss of their fading fugazi fortunes as their stock portfolios tank. Kind of too bad. Maybe you shouldn't have gone along for the ride. Maybe you should have cared for your country a bit more. Here's your poster boy for that the retarded slob rock and roller, Neil Young. Look at the picture they used for Neil Young. He called him a retarded slob. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Neil Young performing in his support of the U.S. Intel blob, the COVID-19 vaccine campaign, the degenerate Democrat Party, Senator Adam Schiff, and BlackRock. Neil Young's estimated net worth is around $200 million. He could lose 90% of that and still live life of luxury. In 2022, he inveighed against COVID vaccine misinformation and promoted the shots. Guess what? You were dead wrong about that, Neil, and now lots of people are dead and dying because of those. And he has many compadres in show business who took the same position against reality. And there's a little bit more of this, but there's James Howard Kunstler is just, I love the way he puts it into perspective. Now, that was a couple of days ago. That was the 7th. Here's today. Take a look at this. Trump pauses higher tariffs for nations willing to deal and hikes 125% for combative China. This is what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. This is what this whole thing was all about, was China. Sky-high charges for food from communist regime effective immediately. President Trump has paused new surge of higher tariffs for at least 75 nations who did not retaliate against his campaign to level the trading playing field for American companies and consumers, announcing a 90-day reprieve from those costs. But the combative China, which responded with 84% tariffs to Trump's campaign for fairness for Americans in international trading, he exploded the rate that Chinese companies will be charged for shipping goods into America to 125%. Roughly, that would mean that a Chinese car that costs about $40,000 delivered into the United States for an estimated $90,000. So here is today's what he said on Truth Social. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125% immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off U.S. and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate solution for the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, as my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States. I have authorized a 90-day pause. Now, this right there is what the Harry Sissons of the world focus in on. Everything else goes away. Doesn't matter who it is, that Bill Walsh, other losers, the retard parade on Blue Skies and Twitter and all that stuff. This is what we've got. All of that and all context gone. They focus in on that. I have authorized a 90-day pause and substantially lowered reciprocal tariffs during this period of 10%. People like Harry, who are should really go back to working the glory holes at the Rye YMCA, said Trump has paused his tariff package for 90 days, except for China, which he increased tariffs to 125%. He lost Americans trillions of dollars to pull back on these tariffs. The art of the deal strikes again. He didn't lose Americans trillions of dollars. Like I said, a lot of funny money, a lot of corrections. We're talking about trillions that are floating around that people are just gambling with because of all the quantitative easing and so much more. And what tariffs are doing is people pulling back. And they're going to be putting it into places that are going to be where the future prospects are going to lie, which means the United States. It's going to come back. But what they're showing is that now we got a 90-day pause because he just doesn't like the damage that's being done. He's so firm in his footing. This is not because he has changed his mind over the last 24 to 36 hours. We were talking about this on Monday with Dilly. He has not changed his mind. The plan has not changed, okay? Everything is going to be fine. Now, the whole thing here that you got to take away from is that 75 countries completely, they were pushovers. 10% across the board, essentially. But it should be obvious that this was all about China at this point. That's what a conscious person would see. Everyone else was a pushover. He was not concerned with there being a trade war with Italy or Germany or anywhere else. I mean, that shit was not going to happen. These were pushovers who were meekly going to take money that was handed to them over the last 50 years. This was handed to them. If you are a small developing nation or whatever the hell it is, and you have traders over here in the United States, traders, people who hate the country, want to transform the country and do away with the concept of American exceptionalism and just kind of melt it into this viscous sludge that is a one world super state. Of course you're going to take it. Of course you're going to take that opportunity to slap tariffs on us while we keep it down to a minimum or nothing at all. Of course you're going to take it. And the second that is disturbed at all, what are you going to do? Get tough with us? You have nothing to get tough with. So 75 countries are coming to the negotiating table. And for them, they have 90 days to work everything out. And you're going to see that everything's going to work out there. But it's very obvious now that this was always about China. Always about China. Let's go to Kevin O'Leary the other night. This was last night, I believe. It's 2 minutes long. It's a pretty great clip, and I wanted to play it.
104% tariffs in China are not enough. I'm
This is when it was still being said it was going to be 104%. Went up another 20 today.
advocating 400%. I do business in China.
Hold on. He said he wants to do 400%.
They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that
I
look
want
like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well,
I'm
hold
not
on
talking
a
about
second,
tariffs
Kevin.
on
Well,
60
I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people,
This is CNN, by the way.
average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the
It's
goods?
short-lived. There will be
But what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's time.
This is what I'm talking about. What's your timeline? The timeline was 50 years. 50 years. This was happening to people for 50 years. Over the course of 50 years. You want to talk about pain. Over the course of those years, how many proud American cities that used to be manufacturing hubs for one thing or another completely went to shit, became one big ghetto? We've been talking about this. I mean, I'm young compared to people who have been talking about this for a long time, taking calls from Americans all over the place who have seen entire towns dry up, turn to ghost towns because manufacturing went away. This is something they're talking about. Well, what's the pain going to be like? What are you talking about? We're just talking about a transition, a tough one, going back to what would be greener pastures. So what are you saying? You want to keep it the way it was just to avoid the pain of having to go back and set things right, where you're a little bit more focused on being self-sufficient at home and being a little bit more of a proud and self-respecting merchant to the rest of the world? Why do we have to be whipped? Why do we have to be gimps? Why do we have to be a giant juggernaut gimp in the world market? That makes no sense. So yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a little bit of a shakeup here, and people are going to look at their retirement funds and go, "Oh no, I lost a little bit of equity." And but hey, just give it some time. Give it some time, and then think about the upside. If we, of course, stay on that path. If we stay on that path and we're not wrenched away by the lunatic, suicidal maniacs who are now multiple generations in on their attempt to destroy and kill this country off. So this whole timeline thing and everybody feeling the pain nonsense, they don't give a shit about that. They've been slowly bleeding everybody out of jobs, giving them welfare instead. Because why? Because it's beneath them. It's been all the work that people used to do and raise families on because the money wasn't fucking inflated, and because everything was home. So we're dealing with higher wages, sustainable wages, all that stuff. Well, people were raising families on these factory jobs, on farming, on agriculture, and all that stuff. And now you have Jasmine Crockett out there shaking a high heel in the air, talking about how nobody's going to take these jobs again. That's why we need our slaves from Guatemala. Fuck these people. Fuck them. So I like that Kevin O'Leary's just, not holding back at all. Last 5 seconds.
Line, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive.
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
Okay, well, it wasn't 400, but it's definitely 125. Maybe it'll be 400 by tomorrow. Maybe it will. Now, I got a couple of things over here I want to try out. Frank Zell got this. He sent me a message, and then I threw something out there, something we're going to get into the feeder system a little bit more here. Frank said Trump pulled the rug out from everyone, especially China, with the 90-day pause. China has now been effectively isolated for the most part. They're not going to have a lot of allies, and their most important ally, Russia, no tariff put on them at all. I mean, listen, if you can't at least appreciate the gamesmanship, then I don't know what to say. It's brilliant. Now, what are you going to do with Russia? They're so heavily sanctioned. They've been so heavily sanctioned over the last couple of years. There is that as well. But as far as the play to ultimately isolate China, who is the most egregious offender from the intellectual property theft angle, which of course is, again, not even just all, it's not all them. We created Red China. We gave China to Mao. The commies in the State Department under FDR that stayed over until after he died put a knife in Chiang Kai-shek's back. We created Red China. We created the China that we're looking at right now in the 1990s, starting with the Clintons. We talked about that. Started military, but other than that, we allowed all this stuff to happen. We took it upon ourselves to allow everybody to tariff the shit out of us, and just effectively not responding to that alone is, you have to be complicit. Why are you doing this to your own country? But then on top of it, to make it so hard to do business in your own country by making the regulatory state insane, making the red tape suffocating, raising corporate tax rates, you're pushing people out of the country into places that have lower ethical barriers like China, which is why we have a lot of our biological stuff going on there in Ukraine and all that stuff. There's no ethical, what are the standards over there? But the other thing there too is China is one of those nations where when you bring your company into their country, you have to take on Chinese partners to be part of the board. So they have all of the proprietary information about the technology that you're developing and the products that you're bringing to market and all that stuff. That's how they steal a lot of intellectual property. And the fact that we had a nation, we have a government over here that was not responding to any kind of currency manipulation or market manipulations out there with the tariffs and everything else, but also effectively pushing through domestic policy all of our entrepreneurs and brightest whatever into the hands of people that are, of regimes like in China. Come on. This is not stupidity. This is the shadow government. This is the world that they have created, which is why I laugh at this whole us versus them mentality with COVID. There is no us versus them. It's all them. It's all them. All of it is them. Them. Everybody works together. So I really appreciate this. Anyway, the gamesmanship is incredible, especially the isolation of China and all this. They're sticking out like a sore thumb while nearly 100 countries have said, all right, don't have to go any further than that. Let's just talk. What the hell's China going to do at this point? Let's see. We will see, because, trade embargoes and tariffs, it's been enough to cause wars in the past. I mean, that's essentially why Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, but I won't go that far with that. Frank then sent me a voicemail, which we're going to start using this. It's called SpeakPipe. SpeakPipe.com. Krista had sent this to me, and I think aside from the calls, and the threads and all that stuff, I think we're going to incorporate more of your voicemails. And here is a little bit from Frank. It's a minute and a half. Let's listen to it, because I got to go and hang out with Matt Christensen in a few minutes. Hold on. Don't screw up on me now.
Hey, Frankie. I mean, you gotta love it what Trump is doing with the tariffs. I mean, everybody's panicking. Just let Trump do his thing. The guy's a master negotiator. And as you can see by the huge rally, everybody was thinking, the whole world, the world was going to end this morning, especially with what was happening in the bond markets. But, he did the 90-day pause, and he, in essence, isolated China. If China's game plan was to rally other countries to stand tall against the U.S., it's not going to happen now. Nobody wants to get punished, and now China stands alone. And now Trump, just slapped them. I think it's now up to 125%. So if China keeps on wanting to go down this road, dude, they're broke. China is broke. That whole country is so built on debt, it's ridiculous. They're not going to win. They are not going to win. Trump should just slap him with some ridiculous number, man, like 600%, and just break him.
That is from Frank Zell. This one is from Steve. Steve sent me in one. I released this into the Telegram just as a market test before. Here's from Steve.
Hey, Frank, the only way this trade war doesn't go our way is if the Rhino Republican establishment sabotages it, works with the Democrats to torpedo what Trump is doing. Love your show. Hate your show.
There's Steve. Here's Harold Finch.
Hey, Frank. This is Harold Finch, your old pal. My goodness, isn't it exciting and satisfying to watch the destruction of communist China happen live in real time?
Well, there you have it. Some people are very excited about it. I'm interested in it all. I'm interested in it all. I am. It's not like I don't have anything on the line. I save money as much as I can, but we're talking about the future, and there's very, very dark times ahead if this wouldn't turn around. Now, there's so many other things that we haven't been talking about in past weeks because this has been front and center. What's going on with digital currencies? Where's the future taking us with that whole thing about the future of the American dollar? What's backing it, and how digitized is it going to get? I mean, there's tons of things, but you take this just for what it is, and the reality of these imbalances with the foreign policy and the domestic policy working together. This is what was supposed to be creating, as Ross Perot said, created that sucking sound at the southern border that just brought everything, all of our manufacturing out to places like Mexico and overseas. I mean, this has just been the crux of it for so long. It's an objectively good thing. It really is. Of course, we can ruin all of our good times by diverting to something else that has some kind of a black pill feel to it. But I can't lose every night. I can't back myself up into a losing outlook every night. Yeah, there's still a lot of shit that we're facing, and a lot of it can go awry. But this is logically sound. And it's uncomfortable because it's essentially it's war. A war is being fought right now, but it's not being fought with torpedoes. It's just not. It's just something else. So we'll see if cooler heads prevail and what happens on the other side of tomorrow. Anyhow, that's it. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for everything. I have let's see. Hey, would you blow me? Says I've been pulled over 5 times. I've gotten tickets for failure to renew my license, which I sign and add under duress and never show up for court. Yeah, I know. See, I don't know anybody that would want to live like that. It's just, I guess it's a matter of how much you're willing to endure and how small of a fish you want to remain. I guess. I don't know anybody. Being in court sounds like hell. And when I read people who are just constantly in and out in court fighting one thing or another, and I guess we'll get around to this more in time. But thank you guys for everything. Thank you to the super chatters, to the gold pillars, and we will see you tomorrow. I'm heading over to Matt Christensen's channel, and I'll see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Jay Dyer will be the guest. And that will also be a Badlands night, too. So we'll have a Badlands audience joining us no matter where you're watching. It'll still be there. I'll just be reading a couple of more ads. Other than that, it should be a great night. And Jay Dyer has been on in a while, so I think we're going to do some deep dives into intelligence agencies. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the establishment of Red China itself. That would be interesting. All right. Until tomorrow, have a good one. Email me, become a sponsor. Like I said, Polaroids, 2020 clubs, anything on Subscribestar or Patreon that's above the $10 mark. I have about 20 of these that I'm sending out. But everybody who becomes a sponsor, no matter where you sign up on quitefrankly.tv, through the Sponsor Us tab or in the description below, there's links all up in there. Wherever you sign up for as a monthly sponsor, we're sending out coffee and keto brains and everything else. And that's that. We'll see you at 7 o'clock. Be good.
I'll catch you on the flip.